Right. So you wanted to do a deep dive on Wizard Clip, and I gotta say I'm with you. Like, this one has so many layers, so much weirdness, and it's really stuck around in local lore and in books, which is always a sign that there's something more there, something that resonates.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. It's one of those stories that, like, even when you try to condense it down, you realize just how much there is to unpack. Like, we've got ghosts, or maybe demons, maybe a witch, definitely poltergeists, and, like, all against this backdrop of early America, immigration, religious tension. It's a lot.
Yeah, it really is. And before we get too deep into it, let's just lay it out for the listeners. So we've got a couple of key sources for this one. The main one you had me check out was this awesome YouTube video from the tape library.
Yeah.
They did a really great job of pulling together the different threads of the story.
Yeah, that's a good one. And they also pull a lot from Michael Kishbauer's book, The Appalachian Legend of the Wizard Clip. That's sort of like the definitive text on the subject. I actually brought a copy with me in case we want to double check any details.
Nice. I always appreciate a good primary source. And for those listening, we'll be sure to drop a link to that book in the show notes.
Absolutely. Now, the other source you sent over was that piece from Atlas Obscura. It's more of a concise overview, but they highlight some interesting points about the location and the lasting impact the whole thing had.
Right, exactly. And speaking of location, that's where we should probably kick things off, right?
Right.
So we're talking about the late 1700s
Mm.
in what's now West Virginia, but back then it was all still pretty wild frontier territory. And in this little village, that's where the story starts.
And the village didn't even have a proper name at that point, at least not one that stuck. They called it Middleway for a while, but we all know it by the name that came later, Wizard Clip.
Oh, yeah, catchy, right? I mean, you hear Wizard Clip and you just know there's going to be a good story there. Okay, so picture it. It's a cold, miserable night. Raining cats and dogs. The wind is howling. And inside this little cabin, the Livingston family is huddled around their fire. We've got Adam Livingston, his wife Mary, and their kids, just trying to stay warm and dry.
And as anyone who's lived through a proper Appalachian winter knows, those nights can get bone-chillingly cold. You can just picture them there, shadows flickering on the walls, listening to the wind. And then...
Yeah, then comes a knock at the door, 3 sharp raps, everyone jumps. I mean, who's out there on a night like that? So Adam, being the head of the household, goes to the door, opens it cautiously, and there, standing on the porch, soaked to the bone, is this stranger.
You know, right away, this is where it starts to feel like a classic ghost story. A dark and stormy night, an isolated location, and then a mysterious stranger arrives.
Totally. So the stranger explains in a thick Irish accent that he's lost and needs shelter. The storm blew in faster than he expected, and he just got caught out.
And Adam, by all accounts, was a pretty hospitable guy, a good Christian, or at least that's how he saw himself. So he doesn't hesitate, invites the stranger in, gives him dry clothes, food, a warm place by the fire, just basic human decency, right?
Yeah, totally. But here's the thing, and this is where things get interesting, particularly from like a paranormal perspective. That tape library video makes a point of saying that this single act of kindness, taking in this stranger, was like the catalyst. It sets off this chain reaction that leads to like decades of crazy weirdness.
Yeah, it's pretty wild. And what's even wilder is that the story of Wizard Clip predates the Bell Witch, like by a significant margin. So some folks actually consider it to be America's first poltergeist. I mean, that's a title, right?
It is. It's like the OG poltergeist. And for those listening who are into the whole, paranormal history thing, this is kind of a big deal. It's like finding the missing link.
Totally. So back to the stranger. Now, he's obviously traveled a long way, looks exhausted, not in great health. And as the night goes on, it becomes clear that he's actually really sick, like maybe dying.
And as luck would have it, they're in the middle of nowhere. No doctor for miles. And even if there was, something about the stranger's demeanor suggests he knows it's beyond that.
Yeah, he has this sense of finality about him. And he doesn't ask for a doctor. He asks for something else entirely. He begs Adam to fetch a Catholic priest.
And this is where those religious tensions that you mentioned earlier really come into play. Big time. Right. I mean, the Livingstons were Lutheran. And back then, inviting a Catholic priest into your home was like unthinkable for many Protestants.
Yeah, and that YouTube video has this quote from a 1907 retelling of the story. It says that some Protestants at the time viewed Catholic priests as Satan's living emissaries. Like, that's how deep the prejudice ran.
Wow. Satan's living emissaries. That's a Intense. So Adam refuses, right? He gives the distance, the storm, all that as reasons. But it's pretty clear from the sources that his own religious beliefs played a huge role in his decision.
Oh, absolutely. And it's easy to judge him for that now, but you got to try to put yourself in his shoes. Back then, those religious divisions were a huge deal. And some folks genuinely believed that Catholics were in league with the devil.
Yeah, it's hard to wrap your head around, but that was the reality back then. So the stranger pleads, but Adam is steadfast. And then, just after midnight, the stranger dies, alone in his strange house, with the storm raging outside. I mean, just the setup for what's to come.
Right. And that's where the weirdness kicks in, like immediately. So Adam gets this guy, Jacob Foster, to watch over the body overnight. It was a common practice back then, to keep vigil over the deceased. Now, those are a bit unclear on whether Foster was a neighbor or one of the Livingston slaves.
Yeah, that's one of those historical details where the records just kind of fade out. But regardless of who he was, Foster goes into the room with the body, lights some candles, and then things start to get spooky.
Yeah, spooky is an understatement. So he lights these candles, and almost as soon as he does, they go out. He relights them, and again, they go out over and over. And it's not like there's a draft or anything. Adam even brings in new candles, lights them outside the room, and they burn just fine. But the second he brings them near the body, poof, out they go.
That's creepy. And it's like targeted, right? It's not just the candles in the whole house going out. It's specifically the ones near the body. I mean, you got to wonder what Foster was thinking at that point.
I can't even imagine. The YouTube video mentions that something else happened that night, something so terrifying that Foster just noped out of there, refused to ever go back in that room. They don't give specifics, but whatever it was enough to send him running.
Yeah, that's the kind of detail that really makes your imagination run wild, right? Like, what could have been so bad that it scared a grown man that badly? And it's worth noting that the stranger, not being Catholic, was buried on the Livingston's farm in unconsecrated ground. And get this, there's supposedly a grave there to this day, but local legend says nobody was ever found in it. Just another weird wrinkle in the whole thing.
Yeah, that's super weird. So we've got unexplained candle phenomena, a terrified witness, a disappearing body, and that, my friend, is just the beginning.
Seriously, that's just the warm-up act. Because after that, things escalate quickly. For starters, Adam starts hearing these noises at night. Sounds like horses galloping. But he looks outside, and there's nothing there.
Classic phantom horses, right? You hear that a lot in ghost stories. But in this case, it gets even weirder.
Oh, yeah. Because eventually, it starts to sound like the horses aren't outside at all. It's like they're running inside the walls of the house. Can you imagine that? Like horses in your walls.
No, thank you. And it's interesting because that's one of those things that really blurs the line between a haunting and a poltergeist, right? Like, is this just spooky noises, or is this something more active, something manipulating the environment?
I don't know, but I don't like it. And it doesn't stop there. The very next night, things take a dangerous turn. Hot coals start shooting out of the fireplace, like flying across the room with course. The family's constantly putting out little fires.
Yeah, that's not good. It's like the entity, whatever it is getting bolder, more aggressive.
For sure. And eventually it gets so bad that they have to stop using the fireplace entirely. They're freezing, but it's safer than risking the whole house going up in flames.
That's a tough choice, especially in that kind of weather, but understandable given the circumstances. And then there are the beds catching fire, like multiple instances of family members going to bed and their mattresses just spontaneously bursting into flames.
That is terrifying. Like, your bed is supposed to be your safe space and suddenly it's trying to burn you alive. I mean, can you imagine the level of paranoia they must have been living with?
It's hard to even fathom. And all this is happening against a backdrop of constant banging on the doors, in the walls, no one there when they check. Just this relentless, unsettling noise designed to keep them on edge, drive them crazy.
Yeah, it's like the psychological warfare at that point. And it's not just limited to the house anymore. The YouTube video mentions this weird thing with a rope that kept appearing, stretched across the road near their property. Like every day, neighbors would find this rope blocking the road. They'd blame the Livingstons, of course, but the family swore they had nothing to do with it.
That's fascinating, right? It's almost like whatever this force is, it's trying to isolate them even further from the community, make them into pariahs. And then we get to the truly bizarre part, the thing that gives the whole legend its name, Wizard Clip.
Okay, so about 4 miles from the Livingston place, there's another family, the Mickers, Irish Catholics, and they get pulled into this whole mess in a really strange way. One day, 2 of the daughters, one from each family, are bleaching linen. a valuable piece of cloth back then. They leave it out to dry for a minute, turn their backs, and when they look back, poof, gone.
Vanished into thin air, like no trace.
No trace. And they
Yeah.
search everywhere. This linen was a big deal, so they're not about to just let it go. And then, 3 weeks later,
It reappears, like magically.
magically, neatly folded, sitting on top of a bush. And it's around this time that the village starts getting called Clip Town.
Clip Town, because things started getting clipped.
Exactly. People start hearing a snipping sound, like scissors, but there are no scissors.
Yeah.
And then they find these crescent, moon-shaped cuts appearing in their clothes, their bedding, any kind of fabric.
Crescent moon shape, that's specific.
Copy.
And creepy. Like, that definitely adds to the whole wizard vibe, right?
Yeah.
Almost like a magical signature.
Right. And it's not just the Livingstons. Visitors to the farm start experiencing it too. A guy takes out his handkerchief, and it's been snipped to pieces. A tailor is delivering a fancy suit, and when he gets there, it's been cut to ribbons.
Okay, at this point, it's either a very mischievous ghost or some tailor-hating entity.
Right. And it gets even weirder. There's this story about a group of young guys who decide to show off by taking their dates to the Livingston farm at night. One of them starts dancing, and suddenly, snip, 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 his clothes are cut in a very strategic way, leaving his backside completely exposed. Talk about a mood killer.
Oh, I bet that story made the rounds. And you know, it's almost funny in a dark kind of way. But the clipping wasn't always so lighthearted. It took a pretty dark turn when it started affecting the animals.
Oh, yeah, this is where things get really disturbing.
Yeah.
The YouTube video mentions this incident where Mary and some friends are watching the Livingston's ducks, and suddenly they hear the snipping sound. And then right before their eyes, the ducks are decapitated.
Decapitate, like cleanly, that's brutal. And definitely takes things to a whole new level of messed up.
Yeah, it's not just pranks anymore. This is something malicious.
Mm.
And from that point on, the family couldn't keep any birds on the property. The phantom shears, as they called them, always got them.
So we've got the clip part down, but what about the wizard? Where does that come in?
Well, that's where the religious beliefs of the time really come into play. The YouTube video explains that Catholics tended to believe it was a malevolent ghost or even a demon. Protestants, though, they leaned more towards witchcraft. They figured the Livingstons had somehow offended a witch, and this was their payback.
That's fascinating, right? How the same phenomena, the same weird events can be interpreted so differently based on people's beliefs. And the video actually makes a point about how the things that were blamed on witches back then, like harming livestock, causing disruptions in the home, that's all stuff we'd now associate with poltergeists.
Yeah, it's like the explanation changes, but the weirdness stays the same. And the thing is, for the Livingstons, it didn't really matter what was causing it. They just wanted it to stop.
Especially after the barn fire.
Oh yeah, that was the turning point. So years go by. The family is basically living in a state of constant fear and disruption. And then one night, the fires come back, but this time it's the barn. The whole thing goes up in flames, and all their livestock is killed. That's when Adam realizes this is serious. This isn't just spooky noises anymore. This is life or death.
And he finally starts seeking help.
Yeah, he starts with his own Lutheran pastor, who basically tells him, tough luck, exorcisms are a thing of the past. I can't help you.
Oh, wow. So even within his own religious community, he's getting turned away.
Yep. Other Protestant pastors he talks to are skeptical. Some suggest maybe it's mental illness, or even that someone is playing a prank on them. But the thing is, with all the weird stuff that had already happened, who would believe it was just a prank?
Yeah, at that point, it's a little hard to buy the it's all in your head explanation. So
Yeah.
what does he do then?
He gets desperate, tries to find help wherever he can, even reaches out to some folks who practice folk magic. But no dice. Some refuse to get involved, others try to help. But whatever this entity is, it just mocks them, throws their ritual stuff into the chamber pot. It's like it's saying, I'm not afraid of your little tricks.
So he's tried everything within his own belief system, and nothing has worked. And that's when things take a very interesting turn, right? He has this dream.
Yeah, the dream. It's a big deal in the story, especially for the Catholic version of events. So Adam dreams of this man in robes, and a voice tells him, this is the man who will bring you relief. And he wakes up, and whether it's his own interpretation or someone suggests it, he becomes convinced that the man in the robes is a Catholic priest.
Wow, that's a pretty major shift. After all that resistance to even the idea of Catholicism, he's now placing his hopes on a priest.
Yeah, it's a big leap of faith, literally.
Yeah.
And so he reaches out to this Father Cahill, who's initially, understandably, pretty skeptical. I mean, who wouldn't be? But he agrees to come to the farm and see what's going on.
And then, of course, things get even weirder, because as soon as Father Cahill steps into the house, this bag of money that had gone missing reappears out of nowhere.
Yeah, talk about a dramatic entrance. I mean, what are the odds? It definitely seems like something is trying to make a statement. And Father Cahill, he does his thing, blesses the house, uses holy water, and for a little while, things actually calm down.
But not for long.
Nope. A week later, the weirdness is back in full force.
Yeah.
But here's the thing. The fact that it stopped at all, even for a little while, that gives Adam hope. Like maybe this is the answer, maybe this is the way to get rid of whatever is tormenting them.
So they call Father Cahill back.
They do. And this time, it's not just a house blessing. The Catholic Church approves a full-on exorcism.
Wow. Okay, so now we're talking serious business. Exorcisms are not something the church takes lightly.
Right. And originally, it was supposed to be this other priest, Reverend Bradley, performing the exorcism. But get this. The YouTube video says that Reverend Bradley gets so freaked out by the activity in the house that he actually calls for backup, sends for Father Cahill to come help him.
If a priest is calling for backup during an exorcism, you know it's got to be bad. Like, seriously bad.
Yeah, this is next-level haunting stuff. So Father Cahill shows up, and they do the exorcism. And according to the church, it's a success. The house shakes, there are all these crazy noises, and then peace.
But hold on, you mentioned earlier that Mary Livingston had a different take on this.
Oh, yeah, this is where the story gets really messy. So in a letter that Mary supposedly wrote to a newspaper, she claims that the exorcism didn't work at all, that the haunting continued even after the priest left. And some people, especially those who were pro-Catholic, started accusing Mary of making the whole thing up.
Wow, that's a twist. So now we've got conflicting accounts of the exorcism and accusations of fakery. It's like a real-life Scooby-Doo episode.
Totally. Minus the talking dog, of course. But wait, there's more. Because a little while later, another stranger shows up at the Livingston store.
Another one. Seriously, these guys need to invest in a no soliciting sign.
Right. But this guy is different. He's dressed in rags, barefoot, and claims he's looking for family in the area. And when they offer him shoes, he refuses, saying he doesn't need them because the climate in his homeland is always mild.
Okay, that's a little weird, even for this story.
Yeah, it's definitely unusual. So this stranger stays with the family for 3 days, and the whole time he talks to them about Catholicism, like nonstop evangelizing. And it seems like he's successful because the Livingstons, or at least Adam, become even more devout Catholics.
So now we've got two mysterious strangers, both influencing the Livingstons in a religious way.
And then, just as suddenly as he arrived, the second stranger disappears, vanishes into a field, and Adam becomes convinced that this guy was an angel, like literally sent from heaven to guide them.
Okay, so at this point, the story is just overflowing with weirdness. We've got the haunting, the clipping, the conflicting accounts of the exorcism, the mysterious strangers. And then, just when you think it can't get any stranger,
The voice shows up.
the voice. This is like the final boss of the Wizard Clip saga.
Pretty much. So a few weeks after the second stranger disappears, Adam sees this glowing light in his room. And then the light starts talking. It claims that it was once a living being, but refuses to show its true form until Adam is close to death. And it says its purpose is to instruct Adam in his newfound faith.
Instructing him how? Exactly.
Oh, just by making him pray for hours on end, waking him up in the middle of the night to recite prayers, forcing him to fast for 40 days at a time. Real gentle guidance, right?
Yeah, not exactly what I'd call supportive. And that YouTube video points out that in many Catholic retellings, the voice is portrayed as benevolent. But based on its actions, it sounds more like a tormentor than a guide.
For sure. And it doesn't just talk. It can also control things in the physical world. It burns a cross onto Adam's vest. It sears a handprint onto a shirt. It's making its presence known in a very real and kind of scary way.
And it's not just messing with the Livingstons. The McCarers, remember them, they get a visit from this voice too.
Oh, yeah. So one night, the McCarers were hosting a Protestant priest who's seeking shelter from a storm. And all night long, they hear these heavy footsteps clomping around the house. But the priest, he hears nothing.
Convenient. Sounds like selective haunting.
Right. And the next day, Adam shows up at the McCarers and tells them that the voice, speaking through him, says that God was the one making the noise, as a punishment, because they were harboring a minister of the devil.
Wow. Okay, so now this voice is claiming to speak for God, and it's clearly not a fan of Protestants.
Nope. And it gets worse. One night, Mrs. McCare puts her baby in his crib, and the crib starts rocking violently. And the voice, again speaking through Adam, says that the devil was trying to harm the child because he knew that this kid would grow up to be a powerful force for good.
And what do you know? The kid does become a reverend later in life. Creepy, right?
Well,
Like, was it a warning, a threat, a prophecy? Who knows?
Yeah, this voice is all about the mind games. And over time, it gets crueler towards the Livingstons. It hides their food, turns their soup into water, lectures them constantly about minor religious infractions. Like, it's obsessed with control, with making them follow its every whim.
Sounds exhausting.
Totally. And it doesn't just stop at psychological torment. It starts inflicting physical pain. One of Adam's sons refuses to do his chores, and his knee becomes infected, crippling him for over a year. And then, just like that, he's healed. The voice takes credit, of course, saying it was a punishment.
Wow, that's harsh. And what about that part where Adam felt the pain of souls in purgatory? That's just messed up on a whole other level.
Yeah, that's one of those details that really sticks with you. And then there's the time when a disembodied arm appears and slaps Adam across the face.
Okay, at this point, I'm officially creeped out.
Me too. And on top of all that, the voice seems to know things it shouldn't. Like, it reveals family secrets, predicts deaths accurately, even knows about events happening miles away before anyone could have told them. It's like it's omniscient.
And of course, it predicts Mary's death. That's one of the most famous parts of the story.
Right. The voice says Mary will die in her own home, and from that point on, whenever she gets sick, she goes to stay with friends or family, trying to avoid that fate. But in the end, she dies at home, just like the voice said she would.
It's like a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Totally. And then there's that story about the dying woman who wanted last rites from a Catholic priest, but the priest's horse disappears, preventing him from getting there in time. The voice later tells Adam that it made the horse disappear, punishing the woman for trying to convert so late in life.
Wow. Just wow. This voice is not messing around. And what about Adam? What happens to him after all this?
Well, he stays a devout Catholic for the rest of his life. He even donates most of his land to the church, with the stipulation that there always be a priest on the property and that any profits go towards building and maintaining a Catholic church.
That's a pretty major commitment. It sounds like this whole experience really shook him to his core.
Yeah, it definitely did. He lives on a small piece of that land for a while, then moves back to Pennsylvania. And some accounts say that the voice stayed with him for 17 years before finally disappearing.
17 years. Can you imagine living with that thing with all its demand and pronouncements for that long? It's mind-boggling.
Yeah, it really makes you wonder about the psychological toll it must have taken on him. And then, 5 years after the voice leaves, Adam dies. And to this day, no one knows if he ever saw its true form.
That's a great mystery, right? Like, after all that time, did he finally get an answer? Or did he die still wondering what or who had been tormenting him for all those years?
So there you have it. The legend of Wizard Clip. Decades of paranormal weirdness, wrapped up in religious tension and fueled by fear and superstition. And the thing is, it's a story that's been told and retold so many times that it's hard to separate fact from fiction. But even if only half of it is true, it's still one heck of a story.
Absolutely. And the fact that it's still so well known that people are still talking about it and writing about it centuries later tells you something. It's clearly tapped into something primal, something that resonates with us on a deeper level. The fear of the unknown, the power of belief, the idea that there might be forces out there that we can't understand or control.
Yeah, it's a reminder that even in our modern technology-driven world, there are still mysteries out there, things that defy explanation. And sometimes those mysteries are a lot closer to home than we'd like to think.
Speaking of closer to home, that Atlas Obscura article you sent made a point about how the land Adam donated is now known as Priestfield. And get this, it's still used as a Catholic retreat center. Like, that's a direct link back to the events of the story.
It's kind of wild, right?
Yeah.
To think that a place with such a dark and strange history is now a place of religious reflection. But it also goes to show how these kinds of stories, they don't just fade away. They become woven into the fabric of a place, shaping its identity. Like, even the historical markers in Middleway still have the crescent moon and shears on them, a permanent reminder of the town's weird past.
And the thing is, with a story like this, there's no easy answer. Was it a ghost? A demon? A witch? A poltergeist? Mass hysteria? We just don't know. And that's part of what makes it so compelling. It's a story that invites us to speculate, to draw our own conclusions.
Exactly. So for those of you listening, we want to hear from you. What do you think was really going on in Wizard Clip? What explanation makes the most sense to you? And what does this whole story tell us about the way people dealt with fear and the unknown in early America? Let us know in the comments or hit us up on social media.
Yeah, we love hearing your thoughts. And if you're really intrigued by the Wizard Clip legend, we highly recommend checking out Michael Kishbogger's book. It's a deep dive into the history and the different versions of the story.
All right, that's going to do it for this deep dive. Until next time, stay curious and keep exploring the unexplained.